Hello, this is Matt Metters of Motorsport LLC, and I thought I'd talk a little about my theory of the future of lawn care. Now, automation is definitely a big topic. You'll see a lot of articles about it. If you take any classes, you'll hear a lot about it. Now, one thing usually to be concerned with automation is office type jobs are easier to automate, which is one reason why I chose to get into the lawn care field, because it's a bit harder to automate than something like basic accounting tasks or basic office work. So, where do we see things going as far as automation is concerned? We already have self-propelled mowers. We already have some basic tracking systems that could be applied in the future. Currently, the big issue is poor range, poor performance, and honestly, the things are constantly stolen. So most people who do end up purchasing them get them stolen, and they never purchase them again. So right now we see a lot of innovation in drone self-driving cars and also in battery technologies. Hopefully through all that can improve tracking systems, range, so on and so forth. One main issue I see with mowing is difficult terrains would be hard to program for, obstacles, sticks, hoses, dog toys, so on and so forth. Shade, perhaps if the exposure value of the camera got too low, it would have issues seeing in a dark shade at certain times of day. And then of course you have the range issue and maintenance issues. Now from a consumer standpoint, I don't really see it being adopted early. What I think will end up happening is you'll start to see it commercially, because in the commercial space we're used to paying, $8 to $14,000+ for a lawnmower. As the average consumer honestly never really goes higher than $1,000, and I can't see a self-automated usable system costing below a significant sum of money. Maybe in the next, 10 years you could possibly see some automated system with inflation, probably $12,000 to $15,000 range. However, when you get there, then you get into issues of range. Would you go with natural gas, electric, gas? Because another issue you also have to concern with automation processes is you have some fire risks. If it ends up throwing sparks in the wrong direction, catching things on fire. And then of course you have to have a bit of a plant database in there saying, okay, this is a weed, run this over. This is a flower, don't run this over. This is this is a bush, try not to hit it. This is a tree, the unit is only X tall, you cannot go under that. So there's a lot of variables to program, and to see it successfully implemented in the consumer space and honestly the commercial space could take some time. Now, as far as tasks such as trimming, you already see with some of the Roombas that sweep around corners with side bristles, I could see that being used for weed eating, but then again you get into the system of vinyl siding damage, so on and so forth. And so it really becomes a complicated task. And then when we talk about things like hedge trimming, I would see that requiring some type of robot to do, and I could see that being extremely expensive and something that consumer wouldn't necessarily invest in within the next 20, 30 or more years, depending on how innovation goes. But idealistically, what I would like to see is in the future, say you'd have your main mowing system. Perhaps you'd have a string trimming system, weeding. Maybe that would be something that's possible without honestly throwing rocks and lava rocks and breaking everything. So once again, very complicated issue. So basically, I see yourself going out, letting the robot cut the grass, maybe let it do the hedge trimming while you sit back, do some edging, make sure everything's nice and straight, make sure nothing gets damaged, because I could see a blade-edged robot easily damaging concrete surfaces with detection issues. So from that point, you just have crews running around the clock, dropping off robots, doing tasks like hedge trimming, fertilization application, planting things. basic landscaping tasks that a robot necessarily couldn't do. As far as the labor force is concerned, which is something we should be worried about, of course, the lack of needing mowers could cause an issue. However, there's a slim possibility that it could lead to better efficiency algorithms with mowing. So maybe you'd have a little bit more space in there and you can focus more on other services, fine tuning, doing a better detailed job at mowing, so on and so forth. And then alternately, beyond automation, you also have the actual concern of, and then another thing to be concerned about in the future that I see would be inflation as it relates to equipment costs. Now, you've already seen with things like trucks, prices going up as well as quality, but mowers seem to be getting more and more expensive every year. So perhaps in the future, we'll see commercial equipment sort of pricing itself out of smaller firms, and then for consumer models, perhaps you'd see something of an implementation of a prosumer market, which you kind of see with some of the consumer zero turns, but they're not quite, I couldn't label them as prosumer. So definitely beyond the actual cost of doing business in the future, that could go up, labor costs could go up, and you may see a lot of the smaller guys going out of business and less people entering the market, which could lead to a more professional landscape, or you get to the point where you see a lot less professional landscape. You see people going out there using your cheap, junky equipment to perform work, and you price out the bigger guys. But again, that's a concern that manufacturers have to think about. And then finally, we have to be concerned about employee wages in the future. We've heard the talks about a $15 minimum wage for some time. Well, I think most people are actually negotiating a little high, a little bit lower. We do pay significantly above minimum wage, and we do pay in line with government statistics for the industry. So we do track what we're paying related to state records and national records to try to start our people off at least at a mean average of the industry, so it keeps things fair. But one problem I can see is if the minimum wage does surge to $15 an hour, then all of a sudden the guys we already pay $15 an hour will expect, they'll expect a $7, $8, $9 raise. And then at which point we have been preparing for that, working on our efficiency, working on training standards, so on and so forth. But I could see a lot of guys either switching to the illegal labor market or just going out of business. Now, the $15 an hour isn't necessarily the issue. The issue is all of a sudden you're having to pay guys $21, $22 an hour minimum, and then it becomes sort of so expensive that the average consumer gets priced out, and then people start doing it themselves. People start investing in more efficient commercial grade equipment, or at least zero turn equipment, and so that could hurt the industry. So in closing, I think the future of the industry will be very exciting. I see automation becoming a thing. I see the landscape changing as inflation and labor rates increase. But I'm hopeful for the future. I think compared to some easily automated tasks, it could become an issue, but we're looking forward to getting there and seeing how things turn out.